Hello, dear students. In this recording, we're going to look at the research process. So far in our research, we have looked at several research components. The research components will make up your research. In the last one, we've looked at it, that just the recording, the previous recording was on research problem formulation. And we said that that's the beginning of the research, that's the starting point. So now we want to look at the entire process of research. So research is made up of several processes, and each of these steps are necessary to make it a scientific process. If you miss any of these steps, then it's not a scientific process that you're following. As we had stated before, research begins with the problem identification. Yeah, the problem identification, and it ends with you communicating your results at the end of your research. The research is made up of 6 major steps, and we want to go through each one of them. We have several learning objectives. You can go through them, but one of the major points is a concept paper, because this is one of the first points of communication that you begin with. This is before you get your results, but you're letting the world know, the research world, what you intend to do and why you intend to do it. So here we have a pictorial view of the research process. As we had stated before, it begins with the research problem formulation. So we've discussed this in detail. We're going to touch on it slightly. I'll not go through it in detail because we've discussed this in quite a bit in detail and in depth. But we already know we begin with literature review. First of all, so that we can specify what our research problem is, 1, and 2, to understand the nature of our problem, those 2 main areas. Once we've identified our research problem, it then leads to determining the appropriate research methods. Yeah, so by now you know you have even a pre-recorded video on research methods or research strategies. We've had discussions on this when we looked at the different articles that we went through. I pinpointed what a research method is, as opposed to a research tool like questionnaires and observations and literature review. Those are tools. They are not a research method, but we already know what some research methods are, and we've discussed them in detail. So once you've identified that, you develop what we refer to as a work plan, a research work plan. We shall touch on this as we go through the research process. Now, once you do this, you develop what we refer to as a concept paper. So the concept paper is something that you're going to do at the end of this course unit. It will be your take-home exam. Each one of you will develop a concept paper. Then you come to phase 2. Phase 2, you will do this, it should be expected this at the beginning of your 3rd year, when you produce a research proposal. So the research proposal is developed from the concept paper. So in addition to formulation of a research problem, literature review, selecting appropriate methodology and a work plan, you then to carry out an conduct extensive literature study, and this becomes your chapter 2. So the first phase becomes your chapter 1. So the second phase, you develop your chapter 2, and then your chapter 3, which is the elaborate research design method. So once this is approved, you then move to phase 3. So phase 3 is actually going out in the field, and you collect your data, you analyze it, define your system, implement it, pick your results, and then write your report. So that's in the pictorial view of research, of the research process. So let's look at formulation of a research problem. We already have a video specific to this, formulation of a research problem. For you to communicate your research problem, you start with giving us a background to the research problem. And this is where you talk about the nature of your research problem. You talk about the nature of your research problem, the research problem itself, the domain in which it sits. Is it in education, in the field of education, in specifically what context? Is it secondary schools? Is it primary schools? Is it schools in developing countries? Schools in Africa? Where exactly? Something like that. Then you come to statement of the problem. So the statement after the background discussion where you talk about the nature of your problem, you state your problem specifically. You define it, yeah? Define it in clear terms. After that, you state your research questions and objectives. Yeah, remember in the video on the research problem, I said every research should begin with a question. There's a question you're asking. Yeah, there's a question that you're asking, and then you have an objective. Then you have a scope. The scope defines exactly where you're going to focus, and beyond that, you're not looking at that. You're not looking at X, Y, and Z. Yeah. For example, if we are looking at the example we have from the previous videos on secondary school students accessing their result records or reports, we said that we are specifically looking at secondary schools in rural areas, and my case study will be maybe this particular school. And in the business processes, we're only looking at the results at the end of a term. Yeah, we're not going to look at the midterm and so on and so forth. I'm looking maybe at only at the results at the end once they've been computed. We're not looking at the marking process, the exam marking, exam setting, and so on. We're not looking at the teaching process. We're looking at the results at the end. So there you're looking now at the process, and then you look at the functional side, the functional scope. How far are you going to? What are you going to deal with? Is it only entering the results and viewing of the results? Are we going to look at editing of the results? Maybe we won't look at editing, simply that the process of accessing the results. And our system is going to, maybe we're going to look at accessing. Someone inputs and then another person accesses, and we want to see, do they access them via mobile, via the web? Is it via SMS, USSD? Those are the different versions you're only going to focus on. You're not going to focus on anything else. Okay, so that may be somebody's scope. So you define, you state your scope clearly. And then you also talk about the significance or justification of your research. Significance or justification of your research. Why is it important that this research is done? To who will be the stakeholders? Who will be the beneficiaries of your research? You can't simply say this should go beyond your case study. Let us say if you're looking at students in St. Mary's, it should go beyond that. You should be looking at thinking that an innovation like this can help any other student in any other secondary school, preferably in Uganda or another developing country. So that should be the justification and significance. Also, it could also be the significance of somebody accessing their personal information. If I've sat for exams, and if I'm a minor, whatever, whether I'm in primary or secondary or university, I have a right to access my results, and as soon as possible. Imagine for someone who goes for a COVID test. I've been for a COVID test before, and I remember being anxious. Am I positive? Am I negative? If I was positive, can I go for mass? Those were my concerns. Can I be able to go out in public? And I remember Sunday was coming nearby. I wanted to go for mass badly. So I was worried. When are they going to give me my results? And I kept trying to call to push the health workers that please give me my results as soon as possible, because they will affect my decisions on whether to go out in public or not, whether to isolate myself or not. So that was a justification for quick results. So the same thing, you can also give out arguments for why a student must have a quick and efficient and transparent way of accessing their personal results. Okay, so that's where you give a justification. Yeah, even also for the parents, maybe also for the parents, they need access to this same data. So you might even in your design, you're also thinking about the parents, the guardians, those who pay school fees, they also need access to these results. Yeah. So essentially that previous page points us to the problem formulation, or rather even those would now be the subtopics within your concept paper. Okay, your chapter 1. These would be your subtopics in your chapter 1. So the background of the study, this is where you give us the nature of your problem. You're reviewing existing literature on the nature of your problem, where it begins from, what it is about, and whatever it is, you can give a picture to the reader. To what extent has this study been investigated before? So this is where you actually point the research gap, where literature is missing on something, where there's something that has not been clearly pointed out. So it's a good, in the background, this is when you begin to point out your research gap. Or rather, this is where you state clearly what your research gap is. So these are just some of the guiding questions that you can consider as you are writing your research background. What are the processes or activities that take place in an organization or community that you have chosen? Who are the actors? Which tools and technologies the actors use? Is there a problem with the current processes? Is there a problem with the efficiency? What is the issue that is there, that is currently existing? And again, you're picking all of this from literature, not from what you think, what is your opinion. Then after that, you state your problem. So the problem is a clear definition that indicates the research gap, what has not been done and needs to be done. It either points to the problematic occurrence, observed events that are puzzling in terms of recent published research. Then you also have to consider, is your research problem an important problem? So this can be given by the reasons as to why you identified why the identified problem must be solved. Why is it important that it must be solved? So you state this clearly in the problem statement. Sources of research problems. So we've discussed this in detail before, but one of the most important we have actually pointed out are published books and articles. Yeah. Reflections from experiences of professors and managers. Your personal experiences, things you have seen. Yeah. Being maybe a student at UMO, what you've observed. Maybe you've observed certain things on e-learning. Maybe you've observed certain inefficiencies in network access, network performance and things like that. And then you say, I want to design a solution that improves maybe network performance at UMO or any university in Uganda, something like that. So these are things but at the beginning of this all are the published articles. You will not state your research problem simply on something that you observed. What you've observed takes you to literature. And once it takes you to literature, you concretize it. You actually state this is something, you're actually making it valid. You're validating your problem that it has been also written about elsewhere. After your research problem, you then have your research question or research objective. Okay, so I hope now we are beginning to see the logic from research problem formulation to where we are now. Once we come to our research problem, overall main objective, which is basically to close that research gap we have pointed out in our problem statement. We can now begin to split it into our sub-research questions or specific objectives. Okay? So here we have an example of developing a transaction information system to improve daily operations at Twenkebe Military and Civilian Hospital. Yeah, so that could be a generic objective. You can think about sub-objectives based on the example I gave you in the problem formulation video, but we're also going to have some more discussion on that. some guidelines on what is a research objective must be. We normally use the acronym SMART. Our research objective should be specific. What do you want to do, or what do you want to achieve? It should state that clearly. It should be measurable, meaning that in the end, we should be able to see that this objective has been met. It should be achievable. So you think about what resources you have in terms of time, in terms of cost, in terms of experience, in terms of access. Can you access it? I remember I gave you the example, if you want to do something with the military, are you sure you can access anything with the military? That's a question. It should be relevant. Will the set objectives lead to your end result or goal? Remember, each of your specific objectives must lead to your overall objective. Time bound. When will the objectives be accomplished? So that's where the SMART comes from. So make sure you follow that. A very good hint here is most of all of you have looked at the system development life cycle. Use that to develop your specific objectives. I remember I gave them to you when we were looking at the problem formulation video. If I'm developing a system, the first thing I look at is the requirements. When I ask the question of in the example of student record system, I will first of all study how student records are created and stored, who accesses them, how do they access them. That is getting the requirements, and then at that time I carry out a system analysis, which leads to the design, then implementation, and system testing, which is also part of evaluation. And then I go back to answering that did I achieve my overall objective. So use the system development life cycle as a guide to developing your specific objectives. Research scope. So I've given a hint on this, so here we are clearly defining the boundaries or limitations of our research. How far am I going, and which area will I touch, which area will I not touch? So generally we talk about geographical scope and theoretical scope. So geographical scope, we're essentially stating I'm only going to look at maybe if it is a tracking system, I'm going to look at maybe a rural school. And then at this point, I may state my case study. I want to do maybe St. Mary's, which is a typical rural school. That is a typical example. Another type of scope you can do is also functional scope, where you state my research, my system is only going to look at access to results. I will not look at how results are formulated, how results are created. I will not look at the examination process. I will not look at the teaching process. I will only look at the end results. That's all. That's functional scope. Then we have theoretical scope. If you have your research involves a certain theory or method, you declare this clearly. This is what I'm going to use. So here we have an example of stating that someone is going to use the system development life cycle. That is a system development method. Yeah, there are other system development methods we can use. You can state which method you wish to use. If you're developing tools, you may want to consider which ones will not be, you may want to say which ones will not be considered. So for example, here we have an example that if you aim at developing an authentication tool for managing the use of computer laboratories and book bank, then you can specify whether your system will consider only voice or fingerprint. So this then goes back to functional scope. So you can state it clear that I'm looking at functional scope. The next thing we look at is the research significance and justification. So I'd already touched on this as well. So here you may want to refer to studies, what are the academic contributions, that if I do this research, I will actually be making a contribution to this area, which has very little knowledge on this. Then you can go further to talk about other stakeholders that will benefit. For example, secondary schools, students in general, parents, and things like that who need to have transparent information and so on and so forth. You have then what we call the research topic. Now, one may wonder, why didn't we start with a research topic? Because if you're looking at a concept paper, a research book, the topic comes first. Why don't we start with a research topic? This is one of the things I want to state clearly. It always starts with a research problem. The topic can even change at the end of your research when you have actually even gotten your results. The topic, however, once a reader, any reader, especially a supervisor, reads through your work, the topic should speak clearly about what is inside your book or your concept paper or your proposal. It should speak clearly about that. So it's a clear statement that represents the aim of your research, or your desired end result. So here we start with first of all, a well-defined problem statement and research aim. So from these, you then develop or formulate your research topic. Okay, so it all starts with a problem statements. From there, you develop your research topic. So the research topic can be derived from a research aim or a research question or definition. The concept paper. So this essentially what you will present in your group in terms of a PowerPoint presentation will be a concept paper, but individually you'll also develop a concept paper for your final assessment for this course unit. And this concept paper will then be developed into a proposal in the beginning of your third year. You can actually start already now if you wish. So the concept paper has all the components that we have looked at. We looked at research method and approach. We have looked at that. So here it says to be covered, but we've actually covered this already. I deliberately did that so that we clearly understand the components first, because the components are really important. So you start with your research background, problem statement, research questions, research aims and objectives, and finally, your methodology. Give me also a justification for your research. Give me a justification for your research. A concept paper can be viewed as an output of phase 1. Yeah. If it is done appropriately, it then can be your chapter 1 for your proposal. Normally, a concept paper would have 2 or sometimes 3, 4 to 5 pages. Be very clear with your discussions. Remember, it's a discussion, not bullet points. It's a discussion. You're communicating something. So typically, as I say, the concept paper evolves into a research proposal, which even gives more in-depth discussion on your research area. Here we have a structure of the concept paper. So keep this in mind as you can do your group assignment and also for your final assessment. References are important, remember, because one of the key points one of the key points about writing these things is literature review. So references actually indicate that you've done literature review and up-to-date literature review. A research plan. Now, this may not appear in your concept paper, but it may appear in your proposal. So the research plan clearly indicates when you will do what activity at what time. So here we have the activities such as reading, working, writing, reflection. It involves many things, but more specifically, what activities would we expect? So first start by creating a complete list of your tasks in your research. Yeah. I'm going to do a concept paper. How long will it take me to do that concept paper? You're going to do a proposal. How long will it take you to do that? You know that you're going to go into the field. How long will it take you to do that? Then to write your analyze your data, and then going to the field, developing the system, going back to the field to answer your question, and then data analysis, and then reporting back. All those are specific activities. These then you give them approximate or a reasonable time, put them in a calendar, and hold yourself accountable to that calendar, because we do get distracted with life. So here is an example of the time schedule. This was for 2015. You can ignore it, but you can think about it in terms of now. Just look at this detailed report. When this person says they would carry out literature review at a certain time, so you can think about it in terms of the proposal, the concept paper, the proposal, and so on and so forth. So I thank you for listening to me. This video goes hand in hand with the problem formulation video, and I hope it helps us see more clearly where we are heading with our research. Again, I'll put up one discussion forum for both videos where you can post questions so that I can respond before or during class. So I thank you for listening.